Welcome. Good morning. Now, today I wanted to talk to you guys today about the adult children of parental alienation. And I have with me Dr. Jorge Guerra. Am I saying your name right? Is it?
Well, if you say it like my mother, you'd say Jorge Guerra Gonzalez.
Oh, Jorge Guerra.
Yeah,
Okay,
Gonzalez. That's
thank you.
Spanish origin, even if I'm living in Germany.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And
No,
you did a research in the adult children of you did a research in adult children of divorced family, and
yes,
among the divorced families, there are children that have been alienated, and the children that were just simply from a amicable divorce and normal, not so amicable, but still normal divorce, but not alienated children.
yes.
And so I thought that was very interesting. And parents, please let me know if you can hear us okay. And let me know where you guys calling in from, because Dr. Guerra is from where?
Originally I live in Germany, I work in Germany, but originally I come from Spain, in Madrid, so in Spain.
So you are in Germany right now. Okay,
I
Melissa
am
said
German.
that she can hear you, so that's great. Thank you so much for letting us know. And where you're calling from, Melissa, and everyone else. So right now, you are in Germany?
Close to Hamburg, yes.
Okay, right. So I'm in the US, and so it's the morning for me, and for you, it's in the evening, I guess.
Exactly, 5 p.m.
5 p.m. Okay, great. Thank you. And Mariska is from Australia. Melissa is from Maryland in the US, which is the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. We got Mary is from Canada. We got Deanna from Texas. Wow, we have people from everywhere. Thank you so much for being here. So, Dr. Guerra is actually a mediator, and he also have a background in law. His training is in law, so he's really understand this from a lot of different perspective. And so I actually met Dr. Guerra in Athens. So talking about a war place, we met a certain place. We came from different places, and I saw your study in the adult children of divorced and separation family. And so I really wanted you to share with us today what you found. And unfortunately, your findings is not a surprise to us, especially the parents that have witnesses their children growing up. So let's talk about that. And then I would love to have a discussion with you about your work as a mediator to see the solution for what we are looking at. So please talk to us about your study. Like, how did you do your study?
Yes, the origin was the idea. I had the impression, well, the certainty that the family support system decide without evaluation, so not really knowing what are they deciding about, if it is right or wrong. They have no possibility to see if they decide correctly or not. So there is no evaluation. And this is why I wanted to show them, and also parents, to watch how has our decision, how our family models have an influence in the future children. So I took
Sorry, hold on. I thought that was so interesting, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. What you brought up, I thought that was such an interesting point. And what Dr. Guerra just said is that he noticed that the family court system has no feedback. So we go to court, the court give you an order, and you go away, and the court doesn't care what the impact of their decision. And we hear this a lot from parents, is how the family court destroy family and destroy children and destroy human lives. And that's such a good point, is that you have something that is so important. It has impact in our life, and yet there's no feedback system. And when you have no feedback, you have no opportunity to improve. And the system simply just close a blind eye and just go, okay, here is my decision on your family and your lives, and you have to live with that. And then you go away, and it doesn't improve because the system have no feedback. That's such a good point. And the thing is, yeah, go ahead.
I wouldn't say they don't care. They just have no means to know if they decided correctly or not. And that's sad. But I think there's the best way to know if how it works. You just ask a friend of yours who is a family judge, and you ask, dear friend, would you entrust your own family to the system you represent? And the answer will be most certainly no, never. And then you ask why. And look, they are the person that know the system better, the best, and they wouldn't trust this system. So they would say no. Most of the time they would say, because I lose control, who is going to decide about my family? And second, because I don't know who is going to decide about my family. So you lose 2 times control. In the end, it's a matter of luck, the decision you get, because there is no possibility for a judge to know which is the best interest of the child, which is a right or wrong decision. And this is, let's say, dramatically, we have to change that. And it's so simple as sad, I would say.
Right, and the thing is, on top of that, I mean, I'm not even talking about corruption, but even the situation in I don't know about Germany, but in the US, judges have such a huge workload, so they don't have a lot of time to spend to understand your case. And you're talking about what's presented in front of them, which is what, both sides of the family, the parents, present to the judge, who they themselves are not able to truly present what is the true picture of the family. And then let alone the judge doesn't have time to look through that properly because they don't have time.
Exactly. That's
so they make the decision very quickly without proper information. And you, as the people that go and receive this service, have no choice of who's making that decision on your family.
No.
I suppose you're going to a restaurant, you go in and look at the reviews, you look at pictures, you look at other people that said, yeah, this is a great restaurant. You go, okay, I want to go there. Like go to a hairdresser, you go, oh, yeah, this place is good, and I saw that Maria is a great hairdresser. I want to use her. Not only I'm going to that hairdresser, I want to use this person. But when you come to family court, you have no choice. This is the most important thing of your life.
No, have no choice. But I'm not talking at all about corruption. It's the system that it's like this. If you want, I can explain you why it is like this. Maybe it is a bit complicated, but it is a long tradition coming from private law. Okay, it's not they are bad people. They do their best, but there are, let's say, 3-4 things that are important that I would never use. I would never recommend to go to a family court, as they are now most of the time. Not in every court. There are some courts, some judges that say, no, we don't like that. We want to change that. But there are very few judges all over the world. So why? First thing is there's no evaluation to know if they decide correctly or not. Second thing, if a couple have a problem, it is an emotional one. Okay? If you struggle with your husband, problems may be jealousy, problems may be frustration, maybe fear, maybe self-confidence or lack of. So these are your emotional problems that are the core of the conflicts in your family. But if you go to a family court, they don't understand that, and they don't look there. You have to translate your emotional problem into categories they will understand. First, for example, custody. For example, alimony. For example, visit access. So you put this conflict into that categories, they will be able to decide. But that's not your problem. Your problem is the emotional one. So they don't look to the core of the problem. Anything they will decide will have not to do with your own family. They will have to do with something else, but not your own family. And the last point, you named it before, they have no time, no resources to know. I have one job. I cannot translate it because I think it doesn't exist in the US. Let's say it is contact facilitator. So I implement court decisions in a family because there were some complaints. A court decides something and nobody cares if it is implemented or not. So I do care and remain with a family some months, sometimes years, until I have the results. Very often, the reality I discover in the family is very different than that make the appointment. So when the court appointed me, thought the reality was A, but after some time, I discovered the reality is B or C, completely different. And why? Because I now have the opportunity to see the family from inside and to spend many time with them, to talk to all of them, and also with the people around them. But the court have, let's say on average, 2 hours time to decide about one family, and this decision will remain with the family for years. So
Yeah,
it is
right.
this is why I'm saying don't go there. It makes no sense.
Yeah, right. It doesn't make sense to go to court, right? And you brought up something that's so interesting, which is, yeah, that's true. The problem that you have is a very emotional one. It's about, the breakdown of your relationship and about your relationship with your children, and
Yes.
yet you're trying to use this judiciary solution to
Mhm.
apply to an emotional problem. So that's a very interesting point. Is that this is why I saw Mariska say I'm currently dealing with absolute extreme adult children alienated. 2 of my 4 children have been completely destroyed and are now perpetrators. Um, yeah, that's a problem. That's a very big problem because they, if they don't wake up, they of course participate in the alienation. Um, and she said the secrecy of the family court protects them and not the children or the families. Yeah, so the family court doesn't protect, and that's a problem. Like you said, a decision that was made very quickly with any good information is now impacted all these lives for the rest of their
Exactly.
life.
Exactly.
Um, I saw Mary said that she wrote to the judge, and then she was told that she's not allowed to write to the judge,
Yeah.
and that is really totally ignorant. And that's true. It's like you said, the system was designed that they cannot receive feedback, and
No, they don't
right. So
want.
that
They don't want.
yeah.
But
So there's
please go ahead. Go ahead.
no. So there's no feedback system, so you cannot improve.
Exactly. And everything what I said applies to normal courts, let's say all over the world, because the system is like this. Why? Because it's inheritance from private law that has to decide on basis which is right or wrong. So which article we apply, which decision is applicable to that case. This is what they have in mind. But now with this old system, very old system from many centuries, they try to implement the best interest of the child. But that changed completely. It's not a question of justice anymore. It's not a question of law anymore. Who is right, who is wrong. It's a question of child protection. And this is the gap we have to fill. And this is what I try to explain it as loud as possible. Not many people have realized that, because they are people that want to do their best. I'm not talking at all about corruption. It's the system that works wrongly, without resources, without looking to the right point, and without evaluation. So the result can be a catastrophe. If you add other points, like the woman that wrote to you, parental alienation has still had another problem. It is a political problem. For many reasons, if you want to discuss, we can do that now, but it's a political issue. Then it makes things even more complicated, because we have no research, no proper research on parental alienation. We have people denying the phenomenon. We have people fighting against that. We have people fighting the recognition of any advance in that regard. So then things are even worse, sadder. So it's incredible. And I can, because I live with that, as I told you, I am a contact facilitator. So I have to do with parental alienation every day. I work on that every day with families. I try to improve that. I try to implement co-decisions. So for me to say there is no parental alienation, it's like saying to you there is no USA or something like that. You say, what? Impossible. I see that every day. But they're still saying that. And it
Right,
is for me
right.
very
And
sad.
actually, we have a lot of research in parental alienation. There's a lot
Mm,
of research out there. There's a substantial amount of scientific work that very solid that determine that parental alienation is real, and here is a problem with it, and here are the solution. But yeah, there's still deniers out there who trying to deny that, and unfortunately, that's the current part of the history that we are on. Just like when you look back to the history of tobaccos, where the people are denying that smoking
yeah.
tobacco causes lung cancer. We've gone through that history, and how many people were impacted by that. And it took a long time for the society to finally wake up and go, okay, that's a problem. So I think we're going through something similar.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and then
We
I
need to,
saw, like, for example, Claudia said that her, in her case, the judge was actually an immigration judge, immigration,
okay, okay.
not a judge, not a judge that have experience in family law. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy things like that. So, okay, so with your study,
yeah.
what is the goal of it? What were you trying to determine? What were you trying to examine?
As I said, to provide a feedback, what happens to court decisions, what
Right, but
happens
what did you
when
measure?
I measure three groups of adults. The first group grew up in, let's say, intact families, where the parents remained together. The second group, children grew up in divorced or separated families. And the third one, they were alienated children. So they grew up in the middle of alienation. Then I compared the three groups concerning life satisfaction and health and many other aspects. So the life satisfaction of group A, if you remember, intact families, is the highest. As you said, there's no surprise in that. But it is one different thing to say that, to suppose that, and say, and you see the figures and the results. So the figures concerning life satisfaction decrease like this. So the life satisfaction of group A is highest, then group B, separated divorced families, and then group C. They are average values. It means there were some participants in group B, separated parents, where the parents did it perfectly. They protected their children from any conflict. So the children didn't realize at all the parents were separated. The values of these children were exactly the same as those of group A on average. Or group A means the parents remained together. It doesn't mean they were happy and there was no conflict there. It only means they were together. So sometimes there were participants where the parents remained together, even if the best solution for them would have been a divorce. So the values of them, on average, are similar to those of group B.
So what you're saying that breaking down the marriage is not a problem. Parents having a problem with each other is not the problem. It's about the children. If you protect the children are fine. Parents can get divorced. Parents can break down in their relationship. It doesn't have to impact the children.
In theory, yes, you are right. In theory, yes. Because you protect any divorce of the parents. You have to imagine, try to see the world as you were 10 or 8 sometime. The world is big. And the main person that give you force, stability, are your parents. So they are the columns of your life. So if they struggle and you see them struggling, you are in stress. So if you don't see that at all, and you don't see and perceive any tension at all, if they respect, okay, I don't love you anymore, but I respect you as a mother or as a father, then most probably these children will have a stressing part, because sometimes they will realize mother and father, they're not together anymore, but the protection is so high that they will suffer no long-term consequences from that. But the worst thing you can do is to expose them to high conflict situations, because then these columns, it's not only they are stumbling, they are fighting to each other. That's really hurtful for the children. And the worst thing at all is then you use these children as weapons. So you involve these children in this high stressful situation, high conflict situation. So according to my results, the more conflict exposure, the worse health and the worse life satisfaction. And the more involvement, the same thing. So the worst thing you can do is have conflict situation, exposure to them, and don't involve them. Don't involve the children at all in this conflict. If you really love them, don't do that. You really love them.
The
Sometimes
thing
very
is,
difficult. Yes.
we've seen this. It's not new actually. We actually have seen this a lot. And the thing is, alienators for some reason seem to not recognize that what they're doing is damaging for their children for the long term. It's not just a little bit here. It's a lifelong thing. And so what you were looking at was both psychologically, like life satisfaction, meaning am I happy with myself? Am I happy with my life? So it's psychology side of it, as well as health. So it actually manifests into physical condition.
Yes. That's an interesting result of my research. So you see, the mental health diminishes from A to B to C, less life satisfaction. But physical health, I also measure with physical health, and values between A and B are similar, but then decreases from A to C. So which is the explanation? Because it's physical health. Let's say alienation is an emotional issue, but it has physical impact. So it have psychosomatic effects. So it affects also the body, which is, I don't know if that's new or not, but it's a finding we should know more about. And one important thing I think you suggested is there's some research from excellent people coming from your country mainly, but outside Canada and US, sometimes also Australia, there's not at all. In Germany, I have the impression that's the first study at all in such amount, in that size, let's say. So we don't know much about the phenomenon. We don't know why, what you said. So you think, or you can ignore the damage on your children when you are an alienator. You are not aware of that. So why is that? So it depends on you. It is your own stability. So you are so unstable that you are unable to see the damage of your children, or is now hatred bigger than, or revenge bigger than love? Why is that? We don't really know. Or it's just a question of money, because sometimes, well, it makes a difference who gets the children. Sometimes it's a difference from 2,000, 3,000 euros, dollars a month, much or less. It makes me, so we don't really know why is that. Or is it a question, I observe that sometimes, now there are more and more mothers affected from alienation in Europe. And the system is the same. It's like a repetition. It's like you follow the steps, a script. So how it works. And I have the impression men hit first. Not if they hit first, they are not hit. So I think that's a new strategy. It's just, I don't trust her. So before she hits me, I hurt her first. And I follow the system. And it begins also by a wrong, a false, not conviction was the right denounce. So when you go to police and say she is violence to the children, and from that moment on, it's prevented. She is prevented to have any contact with them. Then you have time to influence on them. And after sometimes the will, that's another confusion. The courts, many times they confuse words of the child, will of the child, and well-being of the child. So I'd say that's the word of the child, it is the will of the child, and it is the well-being of the child. No, it's not. So now you have time to influence on the children. And because at the end of the day, the court will ask the children, and the children now will say what you want them to say. So it's like, it's too simple and too sad to be true, but it's true.
Right. So what you were talking about was like quite a lot of things. I wanted to kind of unpack it a little bit. You talk about motivation of the alienated.
Yes.
We don't understand what are the reasons, like, do they truly don't understand the impact of what they're doing to their children? Is that simply ignorant, or is that because they think their hate is so big that even though they know that it's damaging for their children, they're going to do it anyway because they want to hurt their ex-spouse, ex-partner, right? There was a study, we did an interview recently, and it's actually specifically on the motivation of the alienators. This study is in the US, like you said, most of the study is in the US. And by the way, Dr. Amy Baker did a lot of study of the adult children of parental alienation. Yeah, in Germany. In Germany. Not in Germany, in Italy. No. I apologize. In Italy.
I know. Together with, exactly. Together with Dr. I know him.
Right.
But it was in Italy. Yeah.
Right. And then there's also quite a lot of study in the US and also the study in Australia by Dr. Mandy Matheson. So yeah, there's quite a lot of different studies there. But yeah, the motivation one I thought was interesting. And I remember, I don't remember specifically all the details, but I remember there's 3 categories, and one of them is actually fear of losing the children. So they are so scared of losing the children that they assume the other parent's gonna steal the children, kidnap the children, and they will never see the children again. So in order to prevent that, they have to steal the children, which is like crazy. It's like they have no empathy to recognize that if they are scared of losing the children, they should share the children, not stealing the children. Like, it's great. So yeah, I think there was that. I think there was vindication, which is, like trying to get back.
I really understand that. Right. It's some of the motives. It's really like this. By the way, I don't know if you know the film. It's a German film. In German, you say, weil du mir gehörst. In English, would be something like, because you belong to me. Have you heard of that film?
No.
It's an excellent one, really good. It describes a process of parental alienation from the very beginning.
Wow.
So it's a mother. I don't know if it's spoiler alert. I can explain some things, but I don't say the end.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's a mother and a father. They get separated. The father has now a new partner.
Yeah.
And it's time that the child, a girl, moves to the father because he have contact that weekend. She is with the father. These 2 days with the father are too hard for the mother. Self-doubts and also fear. Is she going to be the better mother? Is my girl going to love her more than me? And from this fear is the core of her motivation. You remember what I told you about mediation. In mediation, you look there. You look in deep and you discover, it's all about fear. So how can this man disconnect that fear? And then you prevent parental alienation. But nobody cared about that. Nobody looked there. She was scared. So she went to a lawyer and she said, I don't want that anymore. And the lawyer said, okay, I can show you what you can do in order for your daughter not to see the father anymore. And from that moment on, it begins the alienation process. I don't spoil the film anymore. It's good enough. I think it's worth seeing it. What I'm saying is, yes, it's
one
just
of our audience actually posted a link to the film. Samantha actually posted the link in the chat. So if anyone's interested, there's a link to the film. Thank you so much for posting the link.
Oh, please.
Because you are mine, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's exactly the point. There you see, in that case, because she is scared, most probably of losing. It's not only jealousy. I think it's more fear of losing the daughter. Is the other woman, which is a bit younger, maybe attractive also, going to be the better mother. My girl is going to be with her, as my mother, my husband abandoned me. So she's very sad and feels alone and doesn't like the feeling. That was the beginning. Okay, maybe you can understand that. We all can understand that feeling, but now the way of handling with that was destructive, very destructive. I don't say about the end of the film, but it is really very sad, and how the process goes on is disturbing, really disturbing. In psychology, there's a phenomenon. It's called a cognitive dissonance. I don't know if you know about that.
Cognitive dissonance, yes.
So you have two knowledges that contradict themselves.
Yes.
And your head, your brain wants to save energy. It's very lazy. So this is why they cannot live with that inconsistency. So they try to connect both thoughts. So you smoke and you say that's wrong for your health, then you have to connect both thoughts. You want to smoke and still, and you know that's not good for your health. So you find a way of connect both feelings. You say, well, that's not that bad, or it's only 2 cigarettes a day, that's not much. Or my grandfather was 90 and smoked his whole life and nothing happened to him. Okay, then you could connect both thoughts. And in parental alienation, you are not really aware of the harm to the child, not because lack of research. That excellent people making research. Amy Baker is maybe the best, but not only her, Quark, or I don't know, Will, or there are many that part of it, but it's not enough. And all the others are saying that's pseudoscience, that's not real science, what they are doing. I'm not going into that. This is why there's no cognitive dissonance when you do that, because even if you see your child suffering, you don't really know there's a damage behind. So you can live with that because, you don't see the consequences. And if in the end of the day, there are some consequences, for example, a drop in performance at school or work or whatever, you may always say, okay, that's because of him, that is a bad father and fights always and makes stress. And you don't blame yourself anymore. That's because of the father or the mother that fights to see the girl. Okay, you see, so because you don't. It's very difficult to see a cause effect in parental alienation. You don't see the effects immediately, and you don't see exactly which is the form of the effects. This is why this doesn't help. That we have so few research on that, so less research. Yeah.
Right. Another thing that I wanted to point out that you mentioned earlier is that the way that they deal with it is, and one of the ways that they deal with it is using false allegation. Is because of their fear and all these things that we are talking about, they then choose to use false allegation to gain an upper hand in this, and that's a big problem, and that's something that we see a lot in parental alienation. Like it's such a unfortunately a very effective tool in parental alienation is use false allegation of abuse. Recently, actually, it just maybe I think last week, there was a new study that was published by Dr. Jennifer Hammond and some colleagues on false allegation. And actually, what they found is that once the court has gone through and done the research and investigation, they actually found that the alienators are more often the abuser, the child abuser, rather than the alienated parents. So not only that they create false allegation of abuse, they themselves are the abuser. So talking about projection,
yes.
Right.
That's always a projection. So somehow you're abusing your own child. Sometimes you will see your girl crying, missing father or mother, and you will deny that and say, don't do that. I don't cry now. You will see that's wrong, and you are abusing the child, and you are making a false allegation saying that. I don't know, maybe in Germany that's different. There are false allegations, but that's not the main issue. Here is more effective to influence on the will of your own child. Because if you make your child say, I don't want to see my mother anymore, only when I am 18, the judge will say, oh, it's wonderful, such a clever girl, she's only 12. And he expressed so clearly that now exactly what to want. But for me, the clearer a child talks, the more possible there was an influence behind. But that's another way. For me, there are two ways. False allegation works very well, probably in the US, maybe also in Spain, as I heard. Here, you make a false allegation. You don't need to go to court, to a criminal court. You don't need that. You just mention that, and then you will have access to the child without the other parent to have access. And from that moment on, you are the one that uses this contact power against the child, and in order to implement your own interest at the cost of the other parent.
Right. And I do see Jane asking a question about if there's a link or reference to the paper that I just mentioned by Dr. Jennifer Hammond. I posted the link in the chat, so if anyone's interested, and if you have any trouble getting the paper, feel free to comment. I will get that to you. You're talking about, children who then they themselves said, "Oh, I don't want to see the other parent." And that's actually one of the manifestation of parental alienation, which is, if people are familiar, if anyone's not familiar with it, please look into it, which is a 5-factor model, is a diagnostic tool that has been developed and well accepted in determining parental alienation. And this 5-factor model look at all aspects of the relationship, from the alienated to the alienated parents to the children. And one of the big thing is a behavioral manifestation of alienated children. And one of them is actually the independence thing, where they claim that this is their own decision. I made this decision all on my own. I don't want to see that parent. It's my choice. And and if you guys are familiar, I did a presentation, a discussion with you guys recently about cultic culture. And there's a lot of social psychology in cultic culture, including cognitive dissonance, which is a study by Dr. Fettinger, I think. And one of the big things is confirmation bias. When you have this thing that you don't want to change, and you have this particular view, you then collect information to support your bias, and that's why it's called confirmation bias. But another thing is social psychology, which is using way to make the other people, to make the person that you wanted to brainwash feel like they are empowered. You try to make them feel like this is their own choice, this is their own decision. And that's what applies to the children too. And when we interview, and we've done many interviews of adult children of parental alienation, is that children will then being encouraged and say, "Wow, you're such a good girl. Wow, you're such a grown up now. You made this decision on your own." But in fact, they have been spoon-fed and brainwashed into all this information. And then wasn't that, was the other thing, is distorted memory and false memories. So there's also a lot of study in Canada and in the US. For example, we interviewed Dr. Loftus, who did major study in the false memory and distorted memories, which is children can have a completely, like, very vivid memory of something that never happened. And it doesn't take much to plant this false memory in children, and there's major studies in this. We also interview, I forgot her name, about suggestibility of the children memory, which is you can ask question in a way that children will then pick up on it and then take it away with it, even though that thing never happened. And so all of this, and yes, Mariska said Dr. Lalich. Yes, we interviewed Dr. Lalich on the cult culture. And Dr. Lalich is actually a very, very major expert in the field of cultic culture. And she herself was a member of a cult. And so she understood this very well, because when we think of cults, sometimes people think that, cults members as these zombies walking around completely brainwashed and not being able to make intelligent decisions. It's not like that at all. Dr. Lalich actually has this book called About the Choice that talk about the psychology of these people, these members of the cult, which is something that is happening to your children, is that they're actually making very intelligent choices, but because all this social psychology, like, including peer pressure, for example, the sense of belonging, and, they entice to this sense of, feeling like wanting to be a better self. So alienator is trying to make the child feel like, oh, you're making better decision, and the other parents are violent or not safe or don't want you, and I am the better parent. So, the child is seeking, it's appealing to a part of the child that wanting the better. So, the child is trying to do the right thing. And so it's not like zombies. They actually make intelligent decision, but on a very bad framework. And this is, I found this very fascinating. Like I'm looking a lot into the culture. But anyway, sorry. Digest.
No, that's fine. That's fine. In fact, when I study psychology after having studied law, and the professors were so kind and also give me issues that had to do with law, and I studied in depth false memories or biases. And we have the tendency to think our memory is like person-computer memory and works like this. No, nothing at all. We can. If I say you, what did you do at the time of the twin towers were attacked, and if you had written that time, what did you do, and you read it now, you wouldn't believe it. It was like this, because your brain has added and taken away some elements. You would say that's impossible. It's really me that wrote that, but it is like this. Our brain is adding and putting things, and that's one point. And the other one is what you mentioned. We want always to have a high self, a high idea of ourselves. We cannot support ourselves to be bad people. I think I mentioned that as I was in Boston. I can prove we all want to do the good thing, because if you look behind and you remember the heroes in your childhood, you would say it was Peter Pan and never Captain Hook. It was Snow White and never the witch. It was Asterix and never the Romans. It was whatever, I don't know. That time we all identified with the good ones, with the good guys. And this remains forever, because as long as we think we are fine, we're intelligent, we are ethical, we have a high level of self-confidence, and that's what we need to live. Otherwise, we couldn't support. So we have to find a way to justify a way of doing that, even if at the beginning we think that's a bit critical. But we will find a way in order to be able to live with ourselves. Otherwise, we cannot support that. We cannot justify that. We have to do that.
Right.
But self-protection.
Right. And this is part of the reason why your children have to reject you and have to justify it. And that's why when the alienator go, oh, you are violent and you are bad, the child cling on to that, even though that, and then sometimes I interview a lot of parents who talk about incidents that they think is the cause of the ending of their relationship with their child. For example, parents would go, oh yes, that day I took the phone from my child, and then she then or he left my house and never talked to me again. Now, that incident is very minor. Taking the phone away, that's not the cause of alienation. The child is struggling with this conflict thing. The child was demanded to reject you by the alienator, and the child can't justify that. So now you do something very minor, the child go, oh, that's the reason. And the child then cling on to that.
Yes.
Right. Because of this cognitive dissonance that we were talking about, the child have to resolve this conflict in their mind, so they have to justify it with something. And when you do something very minor, it gets exaggerated into something very big, in order for the child to live with themselves, to go, oh, you are bad, therefore I now can just fully commit to the alienators because the alienators pushed me to do this. So I
My
need to.
impression is children and adults act there differently. So the cognitive dissonance applies, I would say, more to adults. Children are more scared. So you are a child, so the world outside is big and threatening. So the two columns that sustain your own life, father and mother, are not only struggling. Now, mother is away. So I'm scared. I really have to cling to father. Otherwise, I feel lost. I cannot betray him because if I lose him, I have nothing else. So that's
You're talking
another.
about attachment theory.
Exactly.
Right.
That is other one because coming from
Yeah.
trauma, but you have to cling to that. Otherwise, you lose that. So it's more you have to identify 100% to the views of the alienator to own survive. So that's another point that doesn't affect the normal procedure of adults, and that's a point that has not been studied at all. But according to my experience, there are not many people because this job I told you, contact facilitator, I think only exists in Germany. I'm not sure. I would say that. So I can really see what is parental alienation and what are the reasons for that. And I would say there are three kinds of children. For one of them is alienation, what they say at court, something like a game. Okay, they are trained by the mother, by the father, by the alienator to say to the court, I don't want to see father or mother anymore. But they don't really mean that. They just say it for fun. Or the alienator say, if you say that at court, you will get a computer or you will get your iPhone or whatever. The second one, they are learning to reject, but they're still attached. They really feel attached to the other person. So maybe they can sound convincing. They are not completely. I will give you an example. Two girls, 10 and 12. The father and the mother divorced. The mother married again. Okay, so there are two fathers that don't like very much each other. So the mother starts to alienate the father, and the girls saying, we don't want to see that father anymore. And they were so convincing. They say that to the judge. They say that to the expert. They say that to the advocate, to the guardian lighten. And I was the last one that heard that. So, dear father, I have no chance. I think there's no chance to change that they change their mind. So the very last time I went to the girls and said, well, I have the father downstairs. It's only 5 minutes. He will be very happy if he can see you just for 5 minutes. And then you can go up and it's over. It's what you want. I have the impression the mother behind me was saying, okay. So the two girls went down with me. And then happened something like every people would say that's kind of a miracle. So both girls that were rejecting so extremely in front of anyone to see the father, they looked to each other, smiled like this, shining, and ran to the father. The father took them, embraced them. It was not only 5 minutes, it was more than 2 hours. They spent the most beautiful 2 hours I've seen in this family ever. After that, they denied that. They were forced to deny. They said, no, everything was invented. We were forced to go down. Everything was a lie. But what I saw that, I make pictures. I say, you see two girls that really are 10 and 12, admiring and loving the father with the eyes. And after that, they will lose the father forever because all the aspects say no, the real will of the child. So that is the second kind. And the third kind is when you really mean it. You really mean, you don't want to see the father and the mother anymore. So the brainwashing was so deep that you have no access anymore to the love you felt for that person. If that happened, there's really nothing to do under normal circumstances. You need reunification therapy or something else. That's my experience. Mm-hmm.
There's a question by Futon in the chat room said, then what about alienated children that become full adults? Why are they still feeling the abandonment of the alienator? This is regarding your comment about the fear. and especially when they were late teens at the time of divorce. Do you have any response to that?
I have two responses of that. My study, I told you, I just make a summary. It was very complex. I analyzed more than 200 variables, and one of them is an intergenerational effect. So it is known there's an intergenerational effect about intact families, so more or less intact children grown up in intact conditions produce intact conditions or intact families, or divorced children coming from divorced families, they produce more divorced families. But how about alienation? And what I found is that alienated people, I don't know why, I cannot imagine why, they get alienated. It is not logical because you are no active part of that. So you are alienated as a child, so you have no influence, and you are alienated as a mother or as a father, and it happens many times. So it happens, and 17 participants from the alienated group, I think 5 or 6, and say, what's the point? How is it possible? The only explanation I think is a bit logical would be somehow your partner, when you look for your partner to be father or mother for your children, it's similar to that alienator. Maybe that's the only explanation I found. And when time comes, do the same thing. It's not very convincing, but that's the only explanation I could find. So that's the first answer. So why this gap, this emptiness continues in adulthood and tries to be somehow compensated or not, I don't know. The other one is when I call parental alienation an intentional and justified severance of parental bonds. So once, and about the attachment theory, once the bond with the father and the mother is cut, this is a source of instability permanently, mentally instability. It's a source of emptiness. It's a source you will always try to compensate, to fill in order to find your own way to grow, to love yourself, to respect yourself. This is, I think that's what the woman asked. So this emptiness will be there, can be compensated, maybe with help, maybe with support, but this emptiness, that it's like beginning a long journey with a big problem. You can do that, but first you have to get rid of it in order to go on the journey. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I saw Mary said the alienating parent has to release the child and allow them to play. So I was that child, right? And I became an adult, full adult, and that date when you become 18, legally adult, there's nothing magical about that date.
Exactly.
That date is the same as the day before and the day before that. And I became a full-grown adult and still fully alienated because it was so entrenched, that brainwashing was so entrenched that as an adult, my father reached out and I still continue to reject him because that's what you knew. It's like religion. You grew up with that, and this is your truth.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how twisted and wrong something is. If you grew up with that and it became your truth, I rejected my father despite anything that he tried to do to reach out to me. And so unfortunately that's the problem. It's and yes, and my attachment to my abuser, my alienator, was so tight. No matter how abusive she was, I was so attached, and it didn't matter how abusive she was, because that's what I knew. And in fact, I did so much more destructive thing with my life in order to support that attachment, that I don't think I ever talk about publicly. But yeah, it's crazy kind of thing, and it destroys your life in so many ways. But anyway, I thought that was interesting when you talk about your work and you've seen alienation. out there, and you've seen a lot of these. And you mentioned, so your role is a contact facilitator, which is an interesting position. And you describe it that you actually get to be implanted with the family for quite a long time. So you interview different people. So that's different than custody evaluator. In the US, we have custody evaluator who does go in and interview different people, but I don't think they stay with the family for very long, and I don't think they spend that much time with a family. Like, how much time do you spend with a family?
It depends. If there is a progress, I can remain 2-3 years. If there is a progress, you see, okay, it's slowly we're moving forward. Sometimes very fast. So they just only needed somebody to be there and control the visits. And after some time, well, everything goes peacefully and they don't need me anymore. So I finished before. So let's say, as a matter of fact, well, 1 year, maybe 2 years as a rule.
So what kind of things do you do to make it improve? Like, as a third party in the middle, you go in, and let's say you see an alienation situation. What kind of things do you do to help?
So, for example, I'll give you an example. It's a real example. Now, may I use it? I don't know. I will use one example in the past, as I did it now. Let's say that was the situation. I will give you another one. It's a bit complex. So, a mother comes to Germany. The father is already there, and she has the idea she will get married to him, and as a married couple, they will grow up their own children. The child was also already born. But when the time comes, and then the father decides not to marry her, but another woman. And he is not so, well, has not the courage to say that live, but he writes that on Facebook. So for her, it was really hurting and humiliating. And that way she said, I go and you will not see your child anymore. And she wants, so he goes to court. Yes, I understand. I was, and also was bad. I'm sorry for that, but that's my son also, and he loves me and I love him. And she said, no, he doesn't want to see you anymore. And as a matter of fact, the child said, I don't want to see my father anymore. So the court appoint me and say, okay, try to solve the problem. And I have 2 problems to solve. The first one is there is a visit time I should implement that was decided by the court. And the second is to try to solve the inner problem of the family. Because if I don't do the second thing, I will have to remain forever in that family. And that's not the issue. The issue is to give them, the parents, back their own autonomy of decision. Okay? So I have to work at 2 levels at the same time. One day I talked to the child and I insisted in talking to him alone, without the mother and without something else. I had the impression it's very fast. The child is not really alienated. I understand the mother very well. So how humiliating is that, what she suffered? I understand that. I said to her, but it's not the fault of the child. And she had to, at that moment, to separate in her mind both things. And I started to talk to the child. And he said, sometimes he misses his father. So I organized a meeting and they met and it was fine. They hugged each other and it was a nice thing. So from that moment on, everything started to move on. Not so fast because the mother was very resilient and resistant, but started to move on. Okay. And after 6 months, the thing was over. That's, let's say, the usual procedure in such cases. Sometimes happens that the court doesn't support my view. So when I finish, they say, no, you don't have to stay anymore. And the alienation is done because the child are old or because the court says, yeah, that's the issue. Sometimes it's a situation I have right now. well, it's very complex to tell. Sometimes it's really, let's say in 80% of the cases, I can solve in the long term the problem of the family. So both things, I implement the core decision and solve the problem in the long term. 20% of the cases, only one of the two things. But it's good I am there. It's good I'm there because in 80% of the cases, there will be no alienation anymore. No, I don't know if you know, there's a journal in Germany, I think it's known also abroad, Spiegel. So it's very, very important one. And they are exactly making a report on that kind of job. The journalist came with me to visit some families to try to understand what is behind. And the last family they're going to visit is a family I quit 2 years ago in peace. And they are still in peace. So it was good that I was there. At the beginning, it was alienation. Both child said, I want to see the father. And now they're all, let's say, harmonizing and doing a good job. Sometimes it's the mother. A very, very sad thing is a mother, let's say, two children. I try to not to say everything exactly. And the father, it was not a false allegation, but he starts to interrupt every visit of the mother. Because I am appointed of the court, legally, I am a kind of tutor. So I have power. So sometimes I can say to the father, to the mother, I accept that, I don't accept that. We do this like this or like this. And after 6 months, a mother that couldn't see her children for 2 years has not only contact with them, but spends half of the holidays with her. So it was really nice. I said, well, job done. But for the father was not a good idea. And he started to manipulate everything. And in the end, he succeeded like this. And from that moment on, it was one of the sad experiences I will always have. From that moment on, the mother was prevented to see the children, and the children rejected the mother, and it didn't change 2 years after. Sometimes it's frustrating, but fortunately, this doesn't happen every day.
So that's interesting role because, like you said, you actually have the power to influence the parents and the children. And it seemed to me what you have been trying to do is to encourage contact. Even the situation with the two girls and the father, to say, okay, let's have this last few minutes, which turned out to be 2 hours of magical loving bonding time with their father, or the situation with the child with, like, the son with the father, where the child and then you were also able to tell the mother, hey, you need to separate this is not in front of the child, you don't do this, or you don't consider this. Yeah, this is humiliating, I understand how you feel, but this is not about the child. So that's a very important role, and it seemed very effective from what you're saying. And I think that's interesting. That's a very interesting role. How do you see, and is that common in Germany? Contact facility?
Yes. Well, common. Yeah, it's common. It was an invention. The German judges are very creative. They invented this Cochem model. They don't practice it anymore, not in Cochem, but in some other courts. They introduced some time ago the guardian of the light, and you have that in the US, but there was no guardian of the light in the 19 years in Germany. And it was the appeal court, or some appeal courts at the same time, some 15 years ago, that had the impression, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we decide many things at family courts, but in the end, nothing happens. So if the parents do not respect our decisions, there's no sanction. So we need somebody that does that job. So in Germany, that's continental law system. You cannot create law as a judge. You have to apply the law. So they found an article at the civil code and say, okay, we put this new profession in that. And it was considered a good idea, so that the legislator changed the civil code in order to include this new profession. So it happened to 2008, 2008. And now I think it's in every family court, they have that profession. So there are many thousand people doing that job. And I think that's a very good achievement that shows perfectly alienation it can be reversed. And also that shows that the reality that had the court in their mind when they decided something was different than the reality that was found out later, for example, by the contact facilitator.
So I'm curious, with your case, like as a contact facilitator, do you get paid by the time that you spend with the family, or do you have a fixed salary and then you get assigned a number of families?
That's a very good question. So if you are a guardian ad litem, you have a fixed amount of money. If you have a contact facilitator, because your job is very different, can be sometimes just to be sure that the children will go down and see the father and then be back. When they are back, you bring them up to the mother again or the father. Sometimes it's the contrary. Sometimes it's really complex because you have an alienating father or mother that does everything possible in order to prevent the contact, invent new things and say that. So then you have to make an extra effort. So that time you have to work more. This is why it's your own choice how much work, but in the end, the result must be the court order has to be implemented, and you have to do as much as possible for the parents to have a common basis to be autonomous again, to decide about their own family without any help.
But is your income a fixed salary, or is it based on the case?
Now it's not a fixed salary. So you are, let's say I am, how do you say that in English? Autonomous. So
Yeah.
you are a freelance, something like that.
Yes,
okay?
yes. Okay, so you get paid per the hour that you spend with the family.
Exactly. And you have
Okay.
many cases that pays you like this.
Yeah.
Or I am a guardian ad litem and have a fixed salary.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking this, and this is not meant to direct at you personally, but one of the problem I found with, at least in the US with lawyers, for example, is that because they're getting paid by the case, they actually is reversely or adversarially incentivized, because the longer the case get dragged out, the more they get paid. So why would I want the parents to have less conflict? I want parents to have more conflict, because then the case will get dragged out and then I get paid more, and I get more customer, and the customers stay a long time. And so the incentive system actually play an impact in the outcome of the situation. So that's why I was asking, it's not about you personally, I apologize, but it's just, I just felt like that's also play an important role, because somehow then it kind of encourage you to stay longer and not solving the problem, because you would get paid more to stay longer, right? So that
I understand. It's like you go to the doctor. So when you go to the doctor and the doctor makes a good job, he is unemployed because now you don't need him anymore. So his business is, fortunately, there are many people that get ill, so that this many people getting old, they will say, oh, he's a good one, so we'll go to him because he does a good job. And many people decide that, and that's his business. You understand that? So it's
okay,
not,
I get it. Yes.
Okay, he's not curing you in order to be with him the whole time, because he earns money with you. It's the contrary. So the better I do that with my families, the more cases I get, because the judges will trust me, say, oh, he does a good job. He's fast and effective. And that's just, it could be like this. I understand that. It could be like this.
I understand,
but it's like the doctor problem. It works rather like this.
But we also have the situation, for example, I take my car into the mechanics, and
Okay.
said, "Oh, my brake has a problem." And the next thing I know, he found a problem with my lights, a problem with my
Yeah.
engine, and then suddenly I have a much bigger
Yeah.
problem than,
Yes.
kind of like
Yes.
going shopping. I went to get milk, and I come home with huge cart of so
Yes.
many things, and I didn't get milk. Like, you
Okay.
didn't solve that thing, right?
I understand that. I understand. It just may happen, but in this case, is your task, let's say, reduced? You have only do two things. One is to implement the court decision, which is very strictly defined, and second, and you have to try to bring the parents to decide by themselves. So it's not that much. You can say, okay, now I add that and I add that. What may happen, for example, a new case 2 months ago, the court said, wow, high conflicting family. Please, Dr. Guerra, please take them. They are so difficult. They are so complicated. We need somebody to take care of them. And they know I can handle complicated cases. So no problem, I will do that. When I am there, I had the impression it's not that bad. And there were positive signs. And the more I am with the family, the more I have the impression, well, if you talk to them respectfully, they respond in such a way. And more, we are far beyond the decision. Now they're really, I was eating with them, mother, father, and children. We were eating together. If I say that to the judge, I wanted to say that to the judge, Mr. Judge, or Mr. Honor, or Mr. Justice, you say that in America, you won't believe me, but the situation in this family now is peaceful. Not only a mediation, it's far beyond a mediation. So I can dismiss the case now. They don't need me anymore. For why? They rule the contact of the girl with the father exactly in peace and without any help. So what I have nothing to do there. And I wanted to talk to the judge. He promised to call me today or tomorrow. So tomorrow or today, I will say that to him. So I have nothing to do. It's my ethical, I will not make a travel to that place just to say, okay, now I'm going to get paid. It's really nothing to do. And most probably the judge will be, let's say, positively surprised about my job. I say, oh, that's a good one. So next time I will charge you with another family. So
Great.
that's really impressive. Yeah.
I
Yes,
do
please.
see a couple of people asking the same question. So Mariska and Dina both asked, like, who pay a contact facilitator? Is it the government, like the court, or is it the parents?
Both. So first are the parents, and if the parents, I really don't know how it works in America, in the US, or in other countries. In America, in Germany, if you cannot afford a judge, a lawyer, you will get paid for that. So in that case, you will not pay the contact facilitator. So let's say contact facilitator is paid by the parents half and half. If you cannot afford a lawyer, you cannot afford a contact facilitator. So the state will pay for you.
Right. Okay. So, I saw Dina asking the question about, like, how do we get something like this in the US? And I actually, this is a question for the parents that are watching. I'm not entirely familiar. So you tell me, but from what he's describing, I feel like we have something, but not entirely like that. So for example, obviously we have supervised visit, which is the person that, like you said, take the children from one parent to the other parent and take the children back and watch the interaction. I don't know if the visit supervisor has the power of influence. I think they can say certain things. I have talked to visit supervisor who said, oh, when a parent does something, I would say, oh no, that's, you don't do that, this and that. So I think they have some influence, but I'd have the impression that they don't have exactly quite the influence like contact facilitate the way Dr. Guerra just talked about. So parents, let me know if you know of something like this. And then also the other thing is like custody evaluator. I do know they do go into the house, they do turn up and visit. They do interview the children, they do interview the parents. So I'm wondering, but I'm wondering if they do anything to influence. I don't think they do. I think they evaluate, meaning they watch and they write to the court. And this is actually pre-court decision. So custody evaluators, the people who, before you have the custody order, they go in and try to figure out what should be the custody order, not implementing the court decision like you talk about. So I don't think it's quite like that. But then we also have supervised visit, where we have supervisor who watch the interaction, who bring the children from one parent to another. I think they do comment on the behavior, the parents, but I don't know if they encourage the children to go, oh, you should go and visit. So I'm wondering, does anyone know if we have anything like that in the US? And then Dina asked, is there a link to the court statute in your country so we could understand how it all comes together and functions? That's a good question. And by the way, for people that are watching, we are going to be interviewing 2 judges from Germany. So Guerra is talking about the court system in Germany. One judge is the retired judge who had a very effective method of dealing with parental alienation, and it has a lot to do with collaborating with a lot of different entities like, custody facilitator and mental health professional and all that. And we have another one who is a judge, who is currently still a judge, who also have a very effective way of identifying and dealing with parental alienation. So we have those interviews coming up soon. And then also Mariska said, what is the training for contact facilitator? Are they specifically trained in parental alienation and how to recognize and treat these cases? And I know that Dr. Guerra here is trained in law and psychology, so that's great. But in general, like contact facilitator, what is their general training?
That's a very good question. In fact, there's no specific training. So you are not, that's not a profession. I am contact facilitator. It's just a task. So I am appointed as contact facilitator and I do that, but it's not a job title. Okay, so I have a training in, but I give myself trainings. And for example, every Friday until the last Friday in June, my issue will be what to do in order to prevent parental alienation. So I am training contact facilitators in order for them, and judges also, in order for them to prevent parental alienation. But there's no specific, there are different trainings you can do and no official one you have to do in order to be a contact facilitator.
Right. So that's interesting. Do you have, before we go, do you have any advice and parents, feel free to post your questions and comment in the chat. And I will send the link to Dr. Guerra so that he can comment on it later when he has time. Claudia said she had a parental facilitator. What is that role, Claudia? And does anyone know what a parental facilitator is and what do they do? Because I know we have guardian ad litem, who is a lawyer who represent the voice of the children, meaning they talk to the children and supposedly they make recommendation that is in the best interest of the children. So hopefully it is about, okay, make sure that you see your parents, that kind of thing. But okay, I saw someone that said she's a supervised visitor, the visit supervisor, and she does have the power to say certain thing if it is not in the best interest of the children. Yeah, I have interviewed visit supervisors, and we had a case of very severe alienation, and the supervisor actually commented to the dad, who is the alienator in that case, that he was not allowed to spend time with the children certain way and say certain thing because he was like just totally torturing the child like not spending time as a quality time. and things like that. So I know they have some power, but I wonder what are some other roles in the court system in the US that, or in Canada, that may be similar or may be helpful. But yeah, before we go, do you have any last advice or words for parents, or any thoughts about the court system too?
I would finish my intervention like I started it. If you can avoid it, don't go to court as we know it, because I named 4 reasons why courts cannot produce good decisions, even if they really want. I am surprised, I am impressed by engaged people trying to do their best for that children, but the means are limited and also the constrictions. So if you are aware, follow my advice and find a way to go out of the court, because you don't know who is going to decide about your family, or under what premises, under which premises. So the best thing, if you have a problem or you have friends, try to find a mediation, a common ground, in order to find an own way to solve their problems. But the other way around is, if you live in Dinant, in Belgium, where the judge Carlier works, then you can go there because you will be well treated and they will help you to find your own solution. But that's unique. There are not many places. There's Arras in France. There's some other places in Belgium, some other places in Switzerland, and that is all. So now the most clever solution is, because of that lacks of competence or whatever, don't do that. If you are in, okay, then you have to try to swim with the water you have found.
Right, because often parents don't even get a choice. Sometimes alienators drag them through the court system, in and out of court over false allegation and recalculation of child support and etc. etc.
In that case, is my advice different. That is usual. You curse on them, or most of the time they are also fathers and mothers that try to do their best and a good job. It works many times not to be offensive, but to be helpful and try to gain them and say, use logic. So, Mr. Justice, so look, my child in this picture loves me and we are cuddling and that's beautiful. And 2 weeks later, she said she doesn't want to see me anymore. So what do you think it happened in these 2 weeks? In this time, I have no access to him or to her. So it cannot be me the cause. I cannot be the cause of that. So if you use a simple logic, it works many, many times at that level without being offensive, and trust them, they really want to do a good job, with some exceptions, but that they are normal in any job.
Yeah, I think what you were just talking about is, and I would encourage parents to do this, is to fully understand, like get yourself educated and look at the 5-factor model, because the 5-factor model actually is a very good framework, even when you don't want to use the term parental alienation in court, because sometimes you run into a situation where that term is being attacked. So even when you don't use that term, but if you use the same framework, it's really very easy for somebody, it's very intuitive for somebody to look at that framework and understand, which is one of the examples that Dr. Guerra just talked about, is I had good contact, because that one of the 5-factor model was positive prior relationship. So prior to this, I had a positive relationship with my child. It doesn't have to be amazing, as long as it is positive. You had a relationship, and yet now factor number 1 is a child rejects the relationship. So yeah, if I can show these 5 factors, then it's very, even if you don't use the term parental alienation, it's very natural for people to go, oh, there's a problem here. Even when they don't call it parental alienation, they can go, this is a problem and you're not the problem. It's the other parent is a problem. And that you should be able to restore the relationship with the child. So really, I fully encourage parents to go into and understand this model, because it covers behaviors of everyone involved and the dynamic of the relationship. I have a book on Amazon. It's a workbook on Amazon to help you presenting your case. Follows the structure of the 5-factor model. It's very inexpensive. I don't even know how much it is. I think it's like $2 or $3 or something on Amazon that you can get. But yeah, I have worksheets on there that you can structure your case. And then whether you use the term parental alienation or not, you can actually present your case this way. And including that example that you just gave, which is, I had a great relationship and then now suddenly I don't. And here are the behaviors of the other parents, and here's the behavior of the child, and here's my behavior, whether I had no contact or, I haven't done anything in that kind of things. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. And I'm so glad that we have people like you that working in the system and understand the problem, and you have the heart to want to solve the problem for the children out there. And I think the finding of your study is unfortunately not surprising. I think what we need is, how do we get more people in the system to be able to see and understand this, is that parental alienation is damaging for family and especially for the children, and it's not a little thing. It's a long-term, and it's not just that the children feel sad, it's psychologically that manifests into physical condition that have long-term impact on these children, and then as a result have a long-term impact on the society as a whole. So how do we get this sort of finding and this sort of understanding to the right people, the power that be, that's the thing. And like you said, you've been doing training for judges and as a contact facilitator and guardian ad litem, and that's really helpful. We need more of that. Thank you so much, parents. If you could please make sure helping us by liking this video, sharing this video. Please join our mailing list on our website, victim2hero.com. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna come back soon. We had 2 judges from Germany, because I'm very interested in how the system works over there. So we do have 2 judges from Germany that we're gonna do interviews with them. One is a retired judge and one is an active judge. Actually, she has been a follower of our work here for a long time. Apparently, I didn't even know. And then we also have some adult children of parental alienation that Dr. Guerra introduced me, so I'm going to interview them as well. And then we also have a lot of other content that coming up soon. So anyway, stay wonderful, and please don't let anyone change you and make you feel like you are in any way less a parent, because there's nothing that can take away that love that you have for your children. So stay within that truth.
Thank you very much.